Good evening. Hope you're all well. Today we're going to be learning a blot of Gemara. We're learning Kuf Tes Vav Amud Beis and Kuf Tes Zayin up to the Mishnah at the bottom. It's Hashem. I know Rabbi Handler got about 6 or 7 lines further, but I just wanted to start at a clean spot because the Shakla Bataria can be a little challenging. So we're going to start 5 lines from the bottom on Kuf Tes Vav Amud Aleph, and then we will pick up from right there. Amar Reish Lakish, minayin lebasar b'chalav she'asar. How do we know that basar b'chalav is asar? And obviously, if you're learning all the previous Gemaras, not just asar be'achila, but also talking about an isser hana. Talmud lomar al tochel mimenu na uvashel mevushal. Obviously, a pasuk that we're familiar with from Korban Pesach, and the Gemara has a double language. Why did you say uvashel mevushal? Shein Talmud lomar mevushal. I don't need the last word. Just say uvashel. That it's something that is going to be aser be'achila and aser be'ana as well. So Amar le, this was the drasha of Reish Lakish. Amar le, Rabbi Yochanan. Rabbi Yochanan says to Reish Lakish, Ke'ura zu sheshana Rebbe? Was it so terrible what Rebbe's drasha was? Why did you, Reish Lakish says Rabbi Yochanan, why did you come up with your own svara? Rebbe had his own drasha. Why didn't you like it? So the Gemara says, what was Rebbe's drasha that Rabbi Yochanan's asking on Reish Lakish? So the Gemara says, the pasuk says lo sochlenu, and the context of the couple of psukim that are there does say lo sochlenu twice, not in this particular pasuk of Dvarim Yud Beis, but in the collection of psukim, it says it twice. So b'basar b'chalav akasim medaber, the extra one, is talking about the Isser Basar B'chalav. This was Rebbe's drasha. And then the Brisa continues, Ata Omer B'Basar B'chalav Akasav B'daber. You say that the understanding of the extra lo tochlanu was talking about Basar B'chalav. Or, Ela Be'echad Mikol HaIsrim Shabbator. Mechatesi, that it's talking about what you think it's talking about. We need some svara. So Amris, say Lamad Miyod Gimel Midos Shator Nidrash Ben. Because we have the Yud Gimel Midos of Rabbi Shmuel, one of the icons of our morning davening. We always remind ourselves that our learning Torah is not based on the whims or the feelings of Chazal. They're based on a rigid set of rules. They are the lens through which we look at Torah. We never look at the Chumash based on the pure pshat level alone always. We don't paskin shilas that way. We don't learn halacha that way. We don't learn a daf gemara that way. So how is it that we know that when it says lo tochlenu twice, that one of them is talking about basar b'chalav? Because of one of the Yud Gimel Torah, midos Torah dreshas bein. Davar halamed me'in yano. This we're familiar with. And basically, it's contextual learning, as they say in modern English. We were talking about something that was talking about 2 minutes. We're not going to go into this, but the pasuk over there was talking about Chullin and Kachim, 2 different iterations of Psulei HaMukdashin. Afkan b'shnei minin, it must be talking about over here. We're also talking about the second Bal Tochlanu, Lo Tochlanu, was also talking about 2 minutes. What's that? Basar b'chalav. Basar b'chalav. So Rebbe is of the opinion that the second Lo Tochlanu was teaching us the din of Basar b'chalav, that it's going to be Asr be'achila. He asks the Gemara, that's all fine and good. Perhaps I can learn that the second Lo Tochlenu teaches me Basar b'chalav because it's 2 meaning just like the rest of the pasuk is. But Habamina Hani Mili be'achila Aval behana lo. I might have thought that Hana is not included. Kamash Malan. Therefore, Reish Lakish didn't like the drasha of Rebbe. Now, this I don't fully understand. Why does Reish Lakish get to give a different pasuk over Rebbe? That's kind of not how it works. Nevertheless, that is what the Gemara says. We're not going to get into that, but it's an interesting question, at least I think. And then the Gemara says, okay, fine. So Reish Lakish needed his own drasha. Fine. The Rebbe. How does Rebbe find out that Hana actually is in fact Aser? Rebbe behana min ale. According to the approach of Rebbe, and according to how Reish Lakish understood the approach of Rebbe, it was only talking about an Isser Achila. Mechatesi, it should also be Aser be'ana. Says the Gemara, Rebbe has another part of the drasha. Nafkalei mehacha ne'emar kan ki am kadosh ata la'Hashem. One pasuk says that you are a nation that is holy, and the end of that pasuk is lo sevashel gedi b'chalevimo. And v'ne'emar lahalan v'lo yihyeh kadesh b'vnei Yisrael. And this pasuk is talking about a man who is the male version of a zona, that should not be malahalan be'ana, just like by a man who sells himself, that there is hana afkan be'ana, just like that's aser be'ana. So too over here it's aser be'ana. So we have a gzeira shav of kadosh kadosh from the two psukim that teaches us the iser hana over here by basar b'chala. Let's talk about a separate mahalach, another mahalach as to how we know that there's going to be an Isser Hana and Isser Achila by Basar B'chalav. Debei Rabbi Eliezer, or as it says on the side, Debei Reb Elazar Tana. He taught Lo Sochlu Kol Nevela, the same pasuk we just quoted earlier that ends with Lo Sivashel Gadi B'chalevimo. Amra Torah Kishatim Kirena. And the Torah over there says, you really have to see the whole thing, that what you should do with food, I'll read the whole pasuk so we have context. The pasuk says, Lo sochlu kol nevela, don't eat any food that is nevela. La gera shebisharecha titanena ve'achla, o machor lenachri, or you can sell the nevela to a goy. So says the Gemara, Amra Torah kishe tim kirena, lo sivashlena v'sim kirena, but you shouldn't cook it and sell it, which implies to us when it comes to basar b'chalav that there's going to be an isser of achila there as well. And another answer, 1/3 of the way down on Kuftes Vav Amud Beis. To be Rabbi Shmuel Tana, we have another brisa. Lo sevashel gadi b'chalevim o gimel pa'amim, one of the most well-known drashas, and this one is actually quoted by the Tur in the halachos in Yoredeya. It's quoted there at the open of the sugyas in Basar B'chalav. Why does it have the pasuk in Chumash 3 times of Lo Sebashel Gadi B'chalevi? No, 3 times. Echad the Isser Achila, ve'echad the Isser Hana, ve'echad the Isser Bishul. It's the trifecta. It's the rarest of foods where it has this incredible Isser of just cooking it, even if you don't eat it. And even if you don't eat it, you're not allowed to sell it. All 3 of them. So owning stock, you're not allowed to be present. You can't help cook it. Mesela Dvaravera. Each one is their own freestanding Isser. But Kreisi Uplesi, who's an Achron, has a very, very big Chumrah. He says that because of the Chiddush of Basar B'chalav, that the blios of Basar B'chalav never get old. We know that we have a rule by blios of no sein tam lefgam. There is no sein tam lefgam by Basar B'chalav. It's choser in there 24/7, 365, which puts you into a very, very difficult situation. You can't get rid of it. Because in order to do Hagala, you need the food to be an Eno Ben Yomo. It's never Eno Ben Yomo. It's always a Ben Yomo. It's a huge chumrah of the crazy place. I do not believe anybody holds this way. We assume that it's no different than any other Isser in regards to blios. And sometimes, and this is hard for us because we have visceral reactions to like Chazer. But Basar B'chalav in this way is more chamor than Chazer. And it is. I mean, just look at what we just learned. There is no Isser to cook milk and chazer. There's no Isser to cook chazer. You can own stock in a company. Let's say maybe it's not so firm. I'm not opposed to it, but based on what I'm seeing in the Gemara, it doesn't seem like it's Isser to own chazer. It's no Isser hana by chazer. It's just Isser. It's an animal that's tummy. Fine. And Tanya, and now we're going to get into a complex sugya of something that we see in our learning world called the learning of a mehatzad. The mehatzad structure of learning is I try to bring a source from here. That does. I try to bring a Gzeira Shava, and I say, oh, no. You can't learn from there because of this. Okay, well, if I can't bring a proof from B, I'll bring a proof from A. And A will be Tochiach. Oh, you have a question on A? B will be Tochiach. B'chazar hadin. Lo re'izeh kere'izeh. So that's the structure of a mehatzad. Right now, what we're going to do is learn a very nuanced sugya of when and where we utilize a mehatzad, and what questions are the kinds of questions that ruin a mehatzad. Not every question works. Maybe only Kal V'chomer question works. Maybe any question works. Well, let's get into that sugya. We're 1/3 of the way down on Kuf Tezvav, Amud Beis. Says the Gemara Tanya, we have a brisa. Isi ben Yehuda Omer. Let's remember his name. He's going to come up a little bit later. Isi ben Yehuda was a Tana, and what did he say? Minayin lebasar b'chalav she'asar. How do we know that basar b'chalav is asar be'achila and be'hana'ah? Says the Gemara. Ne'emar kan ki am kadosh ata. This was the pasuk we've seen twice already on this page that ends with lo sebashel gadi b'chalevimo. And then the pasuk by Treifa says v'ne'emar v'holan v'anshe kodesh tihyun liu basar b'sada Treifa lo sochelu. Malaholan asar, just like by Treifa, the meat is going to be asur. Afkan asur, the same exact thing is true by our case of basar b'chalav, that it's going to be asur be'achila. The Gemara says, okay, I can do that. I can learn with you like that. Ve'in li ela be'achila. I could understand that you're going to say it's going to be asur be'achila. Behana'a minayin. How do you know that it's going to be asur even behana'a? Amris kal v'chomer. The Gemara says, I'll give you a kal v'chomer. So what did we start with? We had a gzeira shava of kadosh kadosh to teach us an isur achila. Okay, gzeira shava. Now we're adding a kal v'chomer to teach us about an isur hana. Amris kal v'chomer. Uma orla, just like the isur orla by trees. We're not allowed to consume the fruits of trees for the first 3 years. Shelo nevda ba'avera asura behana. Did any isser happen to make a tree orla? No. All you did is plant it, which was mutter. You planted a tree. Guess what? You're not allowed to eat the fruits for the first 3 years. So there, by the orla, shelo nevda ba'isura avera. Nothing out there happened be'isser. And what is the din there? Asura behana. There, by orla, even where no avera has taken place, there's going to be an isser hana. Basar b'chalav shenevda ba'avera. When it comes to basar b'chalav, when you cook them, which was itself an avera, eino din she'asar be'ana. I pashut that should be the case, that it should be asar be'ana. So that's how the Gemara says and teaches, again, 2 layers. First, the gzeira shava of kadosh kadosh. We learn from treifa, the gzeira shava of treifa back to los b'ashel b'di b'chalevi mo v'yisur achila. Then the yisur hana comes from a kal v'chomer. Says the Gemara, asking on the kal v'chomer. Wait 1 second. Mala orla shekein lo haisa lo shasa kosher. You can't compare orla to our world of basar b'chalav. Why not? Because orla was never mutter. Orla never had a shasa kosher. I just want to call this out. This is not a kal v'chomer. This is just a difference between orla and basar b'chalav. Orla never had a shasa kosher. There was never a single moment that those fruits were mutter. Masha ein kain by basar b'chalav, that by basar b'chalav, before you cooked them together, each of them in their own right, in the right order, would have been perfectly mutter. No problem at all. So the Gemara is punching to the kal v'chomer and saying punching the kal v'chomer and saying you can't learn from basar b'chalav. You can't learn that from orla. Orla is different than basar b'chalav. Says the Gemara, well, chametz b'pesach yochiach. So now we just added in a whole different thing here. Why did we add in chametz b'pesach? Because shahayisala shasa kosher v'asar be'ana. If you have a case scenario, chametz used to be, it had a shasa kosher. Before Pesach started, the bread was kosher. Now the bread is asur be'ana. So now we see a template that basar b'chalav can follow. What's the template that basar b'chalav can follow? Chametz. Because it used to have a shasa kosher, it's still asur. The Gemara asks the obvious question. Wait 1 second. And we are 2/3 of the way down on the Amud. Kuf Tez Vav Amud Beit. Mala chametz b'pesach shekein anush kares. Wait, hold on 1 second. You can't learn from basar b'chalav to chametz. You're right that both of them had a shasa kosher, and that both of them are asur be'ana. But chametz is going to be chayav kares, and basar b'chalav is not chayav kares. Says the Gemara, I'm going to bring another proof. We're going to take another jump. We went from orla to chametz. And now what we're going to do is jump to the world of kiloya kerem. Says the Gemara, kiloya kerem yochichu. Kiloya kerem is planting wheat within a vineyard. And the Gemara says that that's unacceptable, obviously. She'ein anush kares v'asar bena. There we see the appropriate templating. Now, there's a nuance that just happened here, which is that the Gemara chose to go from orla to chametz. And instead of going back from chametz to orla to do a mehatzad, it added in another source. So we had orla, and orla was supposed to teach us to basar b'chalav. The Gemara says you can't ask from orla. The Gemara says, fine, I'll ask you from chametz. The Gemara says you can't ask from chametz. Fine, I'll ask you from kilei kerem. Why didn't you do a mehatzad? Why didn't you say, okay, I can't learn from orla, I'll learn from chametz. Oh, you can't learn from chametz? Orla yochiach. B'chazar hadin. Lori. Why didn't we learn a mehatzad? So the Gemara is going to ask this among a slew of other questions on this shita of Isi ben Yehuda. So it says the Gemara, I don't understand. Lama li gzeir shava. Why did we start out with the Isra Achila that Isi ben Yehuda mentioned? We had the pasuk of Ki'am Kadosh Ata and the pasuk of Anshe Kodesh Tihun Li, and we said we learned the Isra Achila from there. Learn everything from the Gzeir Shava. Why did you feel compelled to darshan the pasuk that way? Leisi kula bekal v'chomer mi orla. I could learn everything out from orla in the following way. Uma orla shelo nevda avera asura bein be'achila bein behana. Don't be so limited in orla. Orla is usher to eat and is usher behana. So why didn't you just pack the Isra Achila and the Isra Hana in the Kal V'chomer? And there too, Basar B'chalav Shenevda Bo'avera, Eino Dein Sha'asr Bein Be'achila Bein Be'ana. Beautiful question. In other words, let's just go back over Isi ben Yehuda. Isi ben Yehuda bifurcated his sources for the Isra of Achila of Basar B'chalav and the Isra Hana of Basar B'chalav. For the Isra Achila, he had a Gzeir Shava, Kadosh Kadosh, and for the Isra Hana, he had a Kal V'chomer. So the Gemara says, why did you do that? Why didn't you learn everything from the Kal V'chomer of Orla? Orla's Asr B'achila and Ba'ana anyways. Why did you have to learn extra psukim? Why did you do that? So says the Gemara, Isi ben Yehuda felt compelled to do this. Why did he feel compelled? Because Mishum De'ika L'meimar, Choresh B'shor Uvechamor, when we talk about the Isser of having multiple mixed animals plowing, and v'chosem pipara v'dashba yochiach, and also muzzling an animal when you should not, that's a proof. Shenevda bahen avera, but visharu. Says the Gemara, we couldn't learn from everything from Orla because these cases are yochiach, which is nevda bahen avera visharu. That undermines Orla altogether. So says the Gemara, but still, I don't understand. And this is really the crux of what we're about to learn today. I don't understand. Why did you go to a third category? We had Orla, and we tried to learn from Orla to Basar B'chalav. You asked a question about Orla. We said Chametz Yochichu. We asked a question on Chametz. Says the Gemara, why did you go to Kilei HaKerem at that point? Lema Orla Tochiach. Go back and do a Mahatzad. V'lehadar dina v'leisi b'mehatzad. So let's review this question, and then we'll get a little bit of a better understanding of Isi. Well, actually, right now we're just going to ask a question on Isi ben Yehuda. Then we'll get more clarity. The logic of the Gemara is a little difficult. The way that Isi ben Yehuda presents things is that the Isser of Achila comes from the Psukim. When it comes to the Isser Ana, we learn it from Orla. Says the Gemara, you can't learn Basar B'chalav from Orla because Orla never had a Shasa kosher. The Gemara says, fine, we learn it from Chametz. Then the Gemara says, you can't learn it from Chametz. Chametz is Anush Kares. Now, what the Gemara is saying is, right there, you should have said Orla Yochiach. Not Kiloya Kerem Yochiach. Why did Isi ben Yehuda not want to learn in a Mehatzad? What was holding him back? And clearly what we see here in Lamdus is that the Mehatzad is a better argument than bringing a third source. Orla Chametz Kiloya Kerem, or Orla Chametz, Orla Yochiach Chametz Yochiach Mehatzad. Obviously the thrust of the Gemara is that the Mehatzad is a better. Why didn't Isi ben Yehuda want to learn a Mehatzad? Would have been great. Says the Gemara as follows. We're on the first of the very long lines toward the bottom of Kuftes Vav Amid Beis. Omar Ravashi, the reason why Isi ben Yehuda did not want to learn a Mehatzad is because of the following. Mishum de'ika lamemar nevela tochiach, because he had yet another source that would have made his world complicated. She'asura be'achila umuteres be'ana. So that would have poked a hole. And that is why he couldn't learn the Mehatzad. Even if he would have learned the Mehatzad, Orla to Chametz, Chametz to Orla, Orla to Chametz, Lo Rizeh, Kerizeh, even if he would have done that, the Gemara, Isi ben Yehuda posits, would have said, yeah, but Nevela ruins your Mehatzad. So he couldn't do that, and therefore he went to Kiloy Akar. So Amar Le, Reb Mordechai, the Rav Ashi, Hachi Amrini Mishmei Derish Lakish, Nevela would not have been a problem. Why would Nevela not have been a problem for the Mehatzad? Says the Gemara, Kol Mehatzad, Migufo parchinan, me alma lo parchinan. When we have a mehatzad, let's say that Isi ben Yehuda limited his argument to a mehatzad, where we learn that basar b'chalav is aser b'hana from orla and from chametz looping together. Let's say that that's what he did. You have a question from outside of the mehatzad, your question's not relevant. When you have this healthy loop of a mehatzad, outside questions are not relevant. So the Gemara is saying here, look at this. Kol mehatzad, third wide line. Migufo parchinan, me alma lo parchinan. Isi ben Yehuda couldn't learn a mehatzad because of nevela? Nevela's me alma, that's outside of our mehatzad. That's nothing to do with this. You can't ask from there. Says the Gemara, if that's true, that only migufa parchinan, that the only time we can ruin a mehatzad is with an internal question on either, let's using our case, orla or chametz, and you can't ask from me alma, lo parchinan, you can't ask from nevela. Well, if that's true, back to our question on Isi ben Yehuda, teisi b'mehatzad. We're right back to where we were. Now, you wanted to say, Isi ben Yehuda, that your concern was nevela. You want to tell me now nevela is not a valid question against a mehatzad? Give me the mehatzad. Learn it from orla and from chametz. Says the Gemara, we can't. Mishum de'ika lemifrach. The problem is that the common denominators of orla and chametz both have a flaw, and it's different than basar b'chalav. Look at this brilliant piece of Gemara. Says the Gemara 6 lines from the bottom, Mishum de'ika lemifrach, ma lehatzad ha-shaveh shebahen, shekain gidulei karka. What was Isi ben Yehuda concerned about building a mehatzad of orla and chametz, as opposed to basar b'chalav? Because the mehatzad of orla and chametz, both of them are gidulei karka. They both grew from the ground. Chametz is wheat, barley, rye, oat, wheat, spelt. They all grow from the ground. Orla is a tree with fruit, grows from the ground. Basar b'chalav doesn't grow from the ground. So Isi ben Yehuda says, I would have loved to have done that. I would have loved to have learned a mehatzad, that the reason we know basar b'chalav is aser behana is because of orla coupled with chametz. Oh, you have a kasha on chametz, it's kares, orla yochiach. Kasha on orla, there wasn't a shasa kosher, chametz tochiach. I would have loved to do that. But if you build that mehatzad, the two things in the mehatzad of orla and chametz are both gidulei karka. And therefore, you cannot learn a non-gidulei karka such as basar b'chalav from that mehatzad. Brilliant. The Gemara said, now we understand Isi ben Yehuda Klor. Now we understand why he brought Kiloi HaKerem. He needed the Kiloi HaKerem to offset the concerns. Says the Gemara, wait! Ridiculous argument. Kiloi HaKerem. Isn't Kiloi HaKerem also Gidulei Karka? The whole point of the Gemara was, we can't learn the mehatzad of orla and chametz to basar b'chalav because it's gidulei karka. Says the Gemara, ihachi hashtanami ikle mifrach. Even now, when Isi ben Yehuda brings his next argument of kiloi hakerem, mal kiloi hakerem shken gidulei karka. You didn't solve your problem by adding the third source of kiloi hakerem. That's also gidulei karka. Same problem as your mehatzad. Says the Gemara, Amar le Reb Mordechai, le Rav Ashi, Hachi Amrinan, Mishmei Deresh Lakish. Kol mehatzad, when we talk about a proper mehatzad, parchinan koldehu. Then we do a parchinan koldehu. Then any question can be asked. That's fine. However, a quote-unquote lo im amris type of mehatzad, which is a certain structure of a mehatzad, only kal v'chomer parchinan, kal du lo parchinan. In our case, is one of those lo im amris cases, is that it's part of the structure of the dialogue of the Brisa, and the Gemara is pressing to say that in our case, only a kal v'chomer works, a kol duhu does not work. Says the Gemara, v'lifroch mikulhu. In this Gemara, the Rishonim point out this question we're about to read is a little bit strange, because it seems to be we already answered this. But the Gemara says, v'lifroch lekulu malakulu shekain gidulei karka. The Gemara says, even with Isi ben Yehuda's answer of orla, chametz, and kiloi hakerem, trying to offset each of the concerns. The orla has a problem of shasa kosher. The chametz has a problem of kares. And the kiloi hakerem has its own issues. Fine. Whatever the issues are, they're all gidulei karka. So bottom line, Kuf Tes Vav Mid Beis, the Gemara says, When one thing is learned from another, when we learned only Basar B'chalav from the world of Orla, if that's all we had, Kula B'chumra Parchinan, Kol Dehulo Parchinan, then the valid questions in order to reject a regular limud, a regular Kal V'chomer of, let's say, Orla to Basar B'chalav, there, Kal V'chomer, straight up, that requires a Kula or a Chumra to disprove the, not just a difference, right? There's a difference between Orla and Basar B'chalav. One difference is it's Gidulei Karka. One difference is that there isn't Shasa Kosher. That's not Kal V'chomer. It's just different, right? So therefore, we need a Kal V'chomer Parchinan, Kol Dehulo Parchinan. Chada Mitarte, when we're learning one thing from two sources, this was when the Gemara assumed for at least a moment that we were learning from two sources of Orla and Chametz, then Afilu Kol Dehu Parchinan, then that's a more fragile limud, and then any question can be asked. That was the Gemara's question of Gidulei Karka. But Chada Mitzlas, if you're learning one thing, Basar B'chalav, Mitzlas from three things, Orla, Chametz, and Kiloya Kerem, I Hadar Dina V'asi B'mehatzad, Parchinan Kol Dehu, that if you're able to structure a mehatzad, then any question will reject it. The ilo, and if not, kula v'chumra parchinan, kol dulo parchinan. Very, very, very sophisticated. It depends on the type of kal v'chomer. This is a Shas Gemara because the rules here should apply throughout Shas. These are rules of how to do a mehatzad. What do you do in etzchada michada? What do you do in etzchada mitarte? What do you do in etzchada mitlas? So great, great, great Gemara to help us understand the broader world of a mehatzad and how to learn kal v'chomer. So we're on Kuf Tez Zayin Amud Aleph, about 5 lines down. Says the Gemara, wait 1 second. Even if you want to bring Kiloy HaKerem as your next proof, right? Even if you want to say Isi Ben Yehuda is right, we tried Orla, didn't have a Shasa kosher, let's go to Chametz. Chametz was problematic because it had kares. Fine, let's bring Kiloy HaKerem. But V'lifruch Mal Kiloy HaKerem Shekain Lo Haisa Lahen Shasa kosher. We should say that which grew of the Kiloy HaKerem also never had a Shasa kosher. Says the Gemara, Amar Avada Barava Zosameres Kiloy HaKerem Ikron Ne'asar. The actual seeds are usher. What is Kiloy HaKerem? It's if I take a grape seed and a wheat kernel and I put them into the same hole and they grow. But then the fruits that come out of that, whatever grows, I don't know what grows, whatever grows, the Gemara says Kiloy HaKerem, and it never had a Shasa kosher. It was only a seed. Says the Gemara, Zosameres that Kiloy HaKerem Ikron Aser, and V'ha'isa lehen Shasa kosher Kodem Hashrasha. You could have eaten the grape seeds. Isn't that a cereal? Like grape nuts. You eat a grape seed, that is going to be mutter. Once you plant it, it becomes aser. So don't tell me that Kiloy HaKerem has the problem of that there was no Shasa kosher. There was a Shasa kosher before you planted. We know from the Gemara, I think the Gemara in Gittin speaks about this. Remember those Gemaras, all the medical stuff? So I think one of them was they would chew up wheat kernels or wheat and turn it into a paste of some kind and use them for medical things. I don't know, it's kind of gross, but that's what the Gemara says that people did. So what do we see from over here? It must be that the seed itself had a Shasa kosher. No, the Gemara, that's correct. The Gemara, we tried to reject Kiloy HaKerem as a model for Basar B'chalav because we said Kiloy HaKerem, Isi Ben Yehuda brought Kiloy HaKerem to solve a problem. What was the problem? That Orla didn't work and Chametz didn't work. So they said, give out the Kiloy HaKerem. The Gemara says, you can't use Kiloy HaKerem for Basar B'chalav because Basar B'chalav had Shasa kosher and Kiloy HaKerem didn't. Says the Gemara, that's not true. Kiloy HaKerem did have a Shasa kosher, and therefore it is a good raya for Basar B'chalav. So it says the Gemara Masiv. That's not so simple actually. That seeds are considered to have a Shasa kosher. Masiv Rav Shemaya Bar Zeira Hamahavir Otzitz Nakuv Bekerem. Let's say that you bring a flower pot that has a hole in the bottom, Bekerem. You bring it in a vineyard. Like we're assuming that you're growing wheat, and you're bringing it over dirt. So we know from Hilchos Shabbos that's hashrasha. We consider those two things to be connected by the air, one way or the other, however it works. So says the Gemara, if while you're there, im hosif masayim, which we know is the threshold for the violation of Kiloy HaKerem, if it grows 1/200th, then aser. What's implied from there? Hosif in. It's only true if that 1/200th took place. However, lo hosif lo. If it doesn't, grow, then it's not going to be usr. So what does that show you? That the seed alone is not considered to be a violation of kiloi hakerem. That's a kasha on what we just said. So the Gemara says, Amar Abaye tre krae ksive. Really, there's two psukim that are soser one another. Ksiv. One pasuk says in Dvarim Kav Beis, the pasuk says Pen Tikdash Hamaleya. Uchsiv, and the pasuk in Dvarim Kav Beis Tes uses the word Ha Zera Ha Ketzad. How can you understand? Both says the Gemara Zarua Meikaro. If it was planted this way before anything else, and that would have been classical kilaim, then our threshold is behashrasha. Once it takes root, that would be the case of atzitznaku. Zarua uba, but if they were planted only after the other one was planted, only hosif in lo hosif lo. So the Gemara wriggles out of it. Fine. What this basically means is, this was to David's point, is that we have a scenario where the seed was a shasa kosher. Therefore, we have a good answer. Isi ben Yehuda needed in triplicate. He tried Orla and it failed because of shasa kosher. We got it. We found our scenario where kiloi hakerem is the exact template for basar b'chalav. Very good. Now we're about to learn some mechudash dikashitas that we're not used to, because we always assume that basar b'chalav is aser be'ano. Says the Gemara 1/3 of the way down on Kufta Zayin Amud Aleph. Masnisin deloki haitana. Our Mishnah is not like the following brisa, a brisa we've seen before in Shas a couple of times. Titania. Reb Shimon ben Yehuda Omer, Mishum Reb Shimon, basar b'chalav aser be'achila, u'moter be'hana'a. Guys, this is where the study, all the entrepreneurs in the room, everyone's, what? Get selling. You're going to go buy stock when you get home. Shneimar, Hiam kadosh ata, v'neimar lahalan v'anshe kodesh tiyunli. Malahalan over there by the latter pasuk, it's referring to treifa, aser be'achilu moter be'ana, afkan aser be'achilu moter be'ana. Unbelievable. Achlokes tanaim. So if you make stuff up and you like to paskin on your own, all right, you've got your out. This is not brought in Shulchan Aruch. The Shulchan Aruch, the Tur in Yeridea quotes the previous brisa that we saw, the third Gemara in the middle of the third answer that we saw in Kuf Tezvav Beis, which is Los Vashel Gdibach Lebim Gimel Pa'amim. One was Isra Bishel, one was Isra Achila, one was Isra. But this is a shita. It's a shita in the Tanaim. Halfway down to the two dots. Rabbi Kiva Omer Chayav Ov. Rabbi Kiva had taught us in our Mishnah that we had the opportunity to learn together on Shabbos, that he had a unique shita about what was considered to be part of the Isra of Basar B'chalav. Fine. Problem was that he used the pasuk of Los Vashel Gedi B'chalev Imo to say that there are different halachos about different animals. Says the Gemara, Hani ha'afkinhu lechad Shmuel. You may recall from Shabbos that Shmuel punched out 6 different things, 3 things that were included in Basar B'chalav, the fetus and the chalev and all that, and then he excluded a few things, the placenta and the dam. He had a whole long laundry list of things. So Rabbi Akiva, how does Shmuel, it's really a question on Shmuel, how could Shmuel talk about all 6 of those things that he learned? And how could Rabbi Akiva not, he either has to learn them or not, but you can't use the same pasuk for 2 things. The question is not on Shmuel. The question is not on Rabbi Akiva. The question is, how do we understand Shmuel? Rabbi Akiva came before Shmuel. Says the Gemara, Kasavar Rabbi Akiva, as does Shmuel, that Isser Chal al Isser, and therefore, and this is where we need to draw in our Gemaras, Chelev umesa lo tzrichikra. When you talk about whether or not chelev is something that can trigger basar b'chalav, or mesa, which is an avela, can trigger basar b'chalav, I don't need a pasuk for that. The Gemara assumes that that's pashut. Shlil v'dima al yahu, the fetus. Why would that not be part of the Isser Basar B'chalav? You think that just because it's a fetus, it's not going to be Basar B'chalav? That's pashut. Therefore, Aisru Lula Kulu, all the psukim are available. And therefore, Rabbi Akiva can learn as follows. Those are the ones that are excluded, namely, he held that the only time that we have a classical Isser of Basar B'chalav is with a behema, not with a chaya and not with an oaf. Rabbi Yossi Agli the Omer Ne'emar Lo Sochel. If you remember from Shabbos, he threaded the needle. He held that only some of it was half. It was half between the Tanakama and Rabbi Akiva. He was in the middle. Asks the Gemara a little bit of an obvious question based on the Mishnah itself, but let's see. My ika bein Rabbi Yossi Haglili le Rabbi Akiva. What is the difference between Rabbi Yossi Haglili and Rabbi Akiva? Says the Gemara cleanly. Ika benaihu chaya. The difference between Rabbi Yossi Haglili and Rabbi Akiva is a chaya. Rabbi Yossi Haglili savar that a chaya is deoraisa. You take a piece of venison, you boil it in a bowl of milk, you are done for it. That is going to be aser bebishol, aser be'achila, aser be'anma. Again, minus Reb Shimon from above, who says that there's no iser hanu. Rabbi Kiva savar chaya is only derabanan. There's so many nafkaminas. What's the nafkamina? If you have a deer shop that's selling basar b'chalav, you can own stock. That would be the nafkamina of having hana. So all that is answer number one as to what the difference is between Rabbi Yossi Aglili and Rabbi Akiva. And here, says the Gemara, is a second answer. Of ika beinaihu. The difference between them is birds. And listen to this. Rabbi Akiva savar chaya ve'ov eina mina Torah hamidrabanan asiri. Rabbi Akiva was of the opinion that when we discuss chaya ve'ov, as it relates to basar b'chalav, when you cook those things, a chaya or an of, in milk, they are not aser mina Torah. However, hamidrabanan asire, they are aser midrabanan. And check this out. Rabbi Yossi Aglili savar of afilu midrabanan nami lo asir. Forget about your hana. Guys, we're going for dinner. Chicken parmesan. I'm going to make my southern fried chicken with buttermilk. I'm doing it. Come over whenever you want. But you got to be a Rabbi Yossi Haglili. And I remember when I was in YU, everybody heard that Rabbi Hershel Shechter Paskin that you're allowed to make tea in a kli sheni because he held that the halacha is that tavlin are not nispashel in a kli sheni. So, like for example, when we have, you can put salt on Chullin, put pepper on. Why? Because it's a kli sheni. You're allowed. Tavlin and kli sheni is mutter. So everybody heard that Rav Hershel Shechter held that because tea is basically a tavlin, so he was matir to cook. It's the sheet of the Rav Soloveitchik, that it's mutter to cook tea. It's mutter to make tea in a kli sheni. People are like, oh, Givaldik, oh, you better be ready. You do whatever, but you're never eating turkey again. You're not eating veal anymore. There's a lot of chumras. You're not drinking milk. He's got a lot. I know he didn't pass in that one for the tzibur, but we don't pick and choose. But that is what the Gemara says, a wild shita. And then the Gemara doubles down with the brisa. Tanya nami hachi. This usually implies we hold this way, no? But it's not the case. Tanya nami hachi. We have a brisa like this that we've seen many, many years ago in Maseches Shabbos. The Mekomo shel Rabbi Eliezer. In the city of Rabbi Eliezer, the Gemara says, this is in Perek Rabbi Elazar Demila, if my memory serves right. Hayu korsin eitzim la'asos pechamim la'asos barzel. Let's say that there's a moel, and the moel needs to do a bris, and the moel doesn't have a knife to do the bris, or whatever the needs are. And he didn't have an opportunity to do it before Shabbos. So Rabbi Eliezer allows the machshirei mitzvah to be done even on Shabbos. Namely, I'm allowed to cut down a tree, which is kotzetz. I'm not allowed to normally do that. I am allowed to then make pechamim, make coals, make it very hot, go find metal and melt it, smelt, whatever you're supposed to do, make it into a scalpel. So that's one shita. And look at the next one. B'mekomos Rabbi Yossi Haglili, hayu ochlin basar of b'chalav. This is not a theoretical. They ate milk with chicken, which is an unbelievable thing. And the Gemara tells a story. Levi ikla lebe Yosef Rishpa. Levi went to the house of Yosef Rishpa. A Rishpa is someone who traps animals. Aisu lakame resha de tiusa bechelba. And he brought him the head of a tiusa, which according to some is a peacock, some kind of bird. So Rashi says over here, I don't know what that word means. Pawn. I have no idea. Let's see what it says on the side here, because I have a little footnote. The letter mem does it say? Ov shehuskar pores. Pores es notzos navoha aruchos v'hamagvanos b'minei tziv'onim. It has very, very colorful feathers. And they would cook it with milk. So that's what Levi saw in Bei Rav Yosef Rishpa. V'lo omar lehu v'lo midi. And Levi didn't say a word. Levi was a Talmud of Rebbe. Levi was one of the people. Levi and Bar Kapara were the ones who put together the Tosefta. So says the Gemara, Ki asa l'kamei the Rebbe. They went back to shiur Rabbi's like, Chevra, what just happened? Like, Amarle, Amaylo Tashmatinhu. Why didn't you put him into Cherem? You guys are eating chicken with milk? How can it be? Amarle, Levi said, what can I do? Asrei Rabbi Yehuda ben Beseruhu, the Amina, Dorash Rabbi Yossi Aglili Damar, Yotzao, She'ein Lo Chalav. He says, because it's not a mammal and it doesn't nurse, it doesn't have milk. What am I supposed to do? He's got a real shita. Rabbi Yossi Aglili's got a real shita. So he talk out. Again, we're not posking, but if you looked at the Gemara this way, it sounds conclusive. It's just not how we paskin. We paskin like the tour. We paskin like Rebbe, that it is completely usher. We paskin like all of them. All right, we're going to stop right here at the Mishnah. We'll pick up tomorrow with the balance of Kufta Zayin. Kufta Zayin.